Lesson 8 is about APA documentation style. The following are covered in this lesson: documentation, the overview of APA, example citations and references using the APA 7th edition, and other guidelines. And now we proceed. Why do we need to document sources? Okay, documentation is a proof of all the research work carried during the writing of the assignment. Remember my announcement a few days ago? You are expected to read a lot of information which relate to the documentary film Seaspiracy. Okay, after watching the documentary film, I expect you to read more about the issue so that eventually you would come up with an effective working thesis statement. Okay, so of course, when you read references or when you read materials that can help you formulate your thesis and as well as support it, then you are doing research. And in order to cite these references, we'll have to document them. By documenting sources, we avoid, of course, plagiarism. Plagiarism is a crime. Okay, simply put, plagiarism is stealing someone else's ideas or someone else's work and then claiming it as your own. Now, if you would be borrowing information or ideas from other people, you need to cite these authors, you need to cite these sources. When we cite sources, we give these people due recognition. We give them regard. We give them respect. Okay, so that is why we need to document sources. What is APA? APA stands for American Psychological Association. It is one of the many documentation styles used to cite references in written documents. It is used mainly in the social sciences like psychology, anthropology, sociology, as well as education and other fields. In 2019, after a decade, APA introduced the 7th edition of the publication manual to replace its 6th edition. And of course, if there is a revision, certain changes are evident. And in this lecture, I will be presenting to you some of those obvious differences. Okay, so please take note that there are different documentation styles, and APA is just one of those many documentation styles. To name two, we have Modern Language Association Chicago Manual of Styles. Okay, APA is another. Now, these documentation styles have their own styles or templates in writing or documenting research. They also have their own ways of citing references in the running texts, and they have their own bibliographical formats. Okay, the format of their bibliographies or lists of references also differ. So just like the other documentation styles, APA also regulates these three. Okay, the template or the format of the paper, the way references are cited in the running text, and the way these sources are listed in the bibliography. Before we discuss or before I show you examples of in-text citations and their corresponding bibliographical entries using the APA 7th edition, I would like to add a few more tips in writing your essay, which is your midterm requirement. I mentioned before that in your essay, you are expected to cite at least 3 references. Okay, what's the use or what's the purpose of these at least three sources? These are the supporting details that are supposed to be backing or yun nga, supporting your thesis statement. In your thesis statement, your argument or your claim on the issue presented in the documentary film should be presented. Okay, for example, these are your thesis statements, okay, based on the issue presented in the documentary film. Now, these thesis statements should be supported by means of citing 3 references. Okay, so here are 2 example thesis statements. Please do not copy these thesis statements. I repeat, do not use these in your essay. These are examples only. I was not convinced to heed the call of the video to, okay, since the contents of the material are exaggeratedly manipulated and biased. Okay, this is an example, possible thesis. Another example thesis statement. The issue on blank should indeed be addressed, especially now that we are facing blank. Seaspiracy, presenting blank, blank, and blank should concern every individual. Your thesis statement should only be encapsulated in 1 sentence, okay? A thesis statement is expected to be only 1 sentence, but it can be also composed of 2 sentences which are uh, highly related. So that is why I used here the semicolon, because this signals that these 2 sentences are highly related to each other. Okay, so when you create a thesis statement, remember that it should only be written using 1 sentence or maximum 2. Now, to support your thesis statement or to support your argument which is in the thesis statement, you need to look for references or sources. There are 2 types of references. We have primary sources or references and secondary references. Primary sources are direct sources of first-hand information about the topic. Examples are letters written by people who actually have seen or experienced the issue, official records like birth certificate, interview transcripts, legal texts, recordings of speeches or events, transcript of an interview of a witness who was there during that particular moment. Secondary sources, on the other hand, are those that explain, describe, interpret, analyze information from a primary source. For example, we have essays written by authors who did not actually experience firsthand an event, but they gathered information about that event and then they interpreted them, described that or those events, then presented them in an essay. Some more are an article analyzing a novel, a textbook, a literature review. Okay, so these are 2 types of references which you may use in collecting information that can help support your argument in the thesis statement. After collecting information that can help back your argument in the thesis statement, where would you place these supporting details then? Okay, so here's an example. Assuming that this is your thesis statement, I was not convinced to heed the call of the video to blank since the contents of the material are obviously manipulated and biased. Do you still remember where your thesis statement should be placed in your essay? Okay, do not forget that I will assume that the last sentence of your introduction, okay, the last sentence of your introductory paragraph will be assumed as your thesis statement. Now, after the last sentence of your introductory paragraph, you jump to the next paragraph. Okay, in paragraph 2, okay, beginning paragraph 2, you now start your discussion. Paragraph 2 then is called body paragraph number 1. Okay, body paragraph number 1 should only present one particular supporting detail, okay, which is an evidence to support your argument in the thesis statement. I repeat, in every body paragraph, only one supporting detail, only one evidence should be explained. Okay, example. Okay, this may be the beginning, or this may be the first sentence of your paragraph 2 or body paragraph 1. And its purpose is to support the thesis statement. Oh, you're saying that the information in the video are biased and manipulated. Why do you say so? Provide proof or provide evidence. A report by McLean, 2010. Here is an example of an in-text citation. This is an example of an in-text citation. A report by McLean, 2010, stated that blank is not an issue that can be attributed only to fishing. Small-scale fishing does not blank, contradicting the claim in the video. Okay, this is a very good support to the argument which is in the thesis statement. You're saying that the information in the video are manipulated and biased. Why do you say so? Okay, you go to paragraph 2, which is body paragraph 1. Here is one evidence. Okay, and in paragraph 2 or body paragraph 1, I will be expounding further this. I will be explaining further only this. I'll give specific examples, okay, so that you would be able to take my side, or you will be swayed in believing my argument in the thesis. Okay, and when you proceed to paragraph 3 or body paragraph 2, you will be presenting another evidence, which is of course supposed to be different from this one. And your job in paragraph 3 is to expound or to explain in detail that particular evidence. On the previous slide, the supporting detail was taken from a secondary source. Now, that's how we cite secondary sources. I've shown you the in-text citation. Now, what if your source is a primary source? Example, you interviewed someone who knows a lot about the topic. How would you cite the interview? This is an example. Okay, this is the thesis, the same thesis statement. Okay, this is the beginning, or this is the first sentence of the new paragraph that will present the new evidence. I interviewed someone who related with the topic. He is a blank. When I asked him about the issue, he denied what was presented in the video. He said, okay, and to cite, this is how you do it. Open close parentheses, okay, initials of the person you interviewed, surname of the person you interviewed, and then, comma, write personal communication, comma, and then indicate the date when you interviewed the person. Okay, so this is how we cite personal interviews or personal communication when you decide to get information from a primary source. Okay, so if you are going to interview someone, or if you're going to use a primary source for your essay, your midterm requirement, please take note that since it's not recoverable, okay, it's not recoverable, unlike those which are from the internet, which I can easily check when I click the link, then primary sources, cited primary sources, will not be among the listed references. And these primary sources will not be counted as one of the required sources in your midterm essay. Okay, so please take note of that. Since primary sources, or the information from the primary sources, are not recoverable, they may be cited in the text only. You may cite a personal communication, but since it will not be among the listed references, okay, do not include them under the list of references. They will not be counted as one of the required sources. Okay. However, when you write your manuscript, your thesis, of course, these primary sources may be listed in the bibliography. And in order for the data to be recovered, usually a transcript of the interview is included in the appendices. Okay, but since I'm not going to require you to include a transcript of the interview with a primary source, then I repeat for the third time, this cited personal communication will not be counted as one of the required sources in your midterm requirement or midterm exam. To properly cite a source, you will be needing the following information. So every time you do research, jot down the following information: the complete name of the author or the authors, the year of publication, the title of the article, the book, periodical, or website, the complete URL of source where the article can be retrieved, and the date today for the interview, or the date when the interview is conducted. I will now be presenting to you example reference list entries or bibliography entries and their corresponding in-text citations using the APA 7th edition. Okay, for the first example, assuming that your reference has only one author and the article is from a website, so how do you write down the reference list entry or the bibliographical entry? So this is how you do it. You begin with the surname of the author, comma, followed by the initial. Enclosed in parentheses is the date of publication, period. Next is the title of the article. For the title of the article, only the first letter of the first word and the first letter of the proper noun, if ever there is a proper noun in the title, should be in capital letter. The rest of the words should not begin with a capital letter. After the title of the article, which is also in italics, okay, place a period. After that period, indicate the URL. Okay, now, how would this particular reference appear in the running text? I repeat, how would this particular reference appear in the running text? There are two types or two formats of in-text citations. One is parenthetical, the other one is narrative. In parenthetical citations, the author's surname and the publication date both appear in parentheses. In narrative citations, the author name or the author's surname is incorporated into the text as part of the sentence, and the year of the publication is in parentheses. Okay, so don't forget those two types of, or those two formats of in-text citations. We have parenthetical and narrative. Now, this reference here would appear in the running text using either format. Barras, okay, 2018 reported that Africa. Okay, another way is this one. And usually, the parenthetical citation is placed at the end of a paragraph. I repeat, a parenthetical in-text citation usually appears at the end of a paragraph. It is usually, or the end of a sentence. Now, keep in mind that the period should be placed after the closing parentheses. Don't forget that the period should be placed after the closing parentheses, not before the open parentheses. Oh, and by the way, do not forget to indent the succeeding lines after the first line. Okay, do not forget the hanging indentation. Now, assuming that you have an online article without the date of publication and the author's name. So how do you cite that reference in the bibliography or list of references? This is how you do it. In place of the name of the author, you use the title of the page title. Okay? And then followed by a period, and then enclosed in parentheses is the abbreviation ND, which stands for no date. Then period. This, in place of the title of the article, is the website name. Then period. After that, the URL. Don't forget the hanging indentation. In the running text, when you use either the parenthetical or the narrative in-text citation, this is how it may appear. Okay, first format. Okay, the narrative in-text citation, it would appear like this. The Water Action Decade and the article reported that. If you would use the parenthetical in-text citation format, then this is how it would look like. Okay, it's assumed to be the last sentence of the paragraph. That water conservation efforts are needed. In closing parentheses, the title of the page, comma, the abbreviation ND for no date, and then after the closing parentheses, make sure to end it with a period. If you will be borrowing information or using information from a newspaper article, okay, assuming that it has two authors, then this is how to create or write the reference list entry or the bibliographical entry. Okay, you begin with the surname of the first author, comma, the initial, and then the ampersand before the surname of the second author, comma, the initial, then enclose in parentheses the date of publication, the complete date of publication of the online newspaper article, followed by the title of the newspaper article. Okay, this is the title of the newspaper article. Remember that only the first word of the title should be capitalized, as well as the first letter of the first word after the column. And if you have here in the title a proper noun, then the first letter of that proper noun should also be capitalized. After the title of the article, period, it's followed by the title of the newspaper, the online newspaper. However, this time, the first letter of each word, the first letter of each word of the title of the newspaper should be capitalized. And then followed by another period, and the last entry should be the URL. Do not forget, once again, the hanging indentation. Now, how would this particular reference appear in the running text? Two ways: narrative format, parenthetical format. Okay, Harold and Maron, 2015. Now, in the running text, spell out the word "and." I repeat, in the running text, do not use the ampersand. Okay, do not use the ampersand in the running text. The word "and" should be spelled out. If you're going to use the parenthetical format, Okay, it's expected to be located at the end of a sentence or at the end of the paragraph. Then both surnames combined with an ampersand would appear along with the year of publication inside parentheses. The period should be placed after the closing parentheses. In case you found an article from an online journal and it can help you back your thesis, this is how you cite that journal article if it was written by more than 20 authors. So first you cite or you indicate the surnames and the initials of the first 19 authors, followed by ellipsis, and then you place or you write down the surname and the initials of the last author. Okay, the last author. After the period, open close parentheses. Inside those parentheses is the year of publication, then period. This is the title of the journal article. Again, this is the title of the online journal article. Bear in mind that only the first letter of the first word and the first letter of the first word after the colon should be capitalized. If there is a proper noun in the title, the first letter of that proper noun should also be capitalized. After the title of the article, period, what's next is the title of the online journal. The first letter of each important word should be capitalized. The word of is a preposition. It's not a major concept or a key word in the title of the journal, so we do not capitalize the O of the preposition of. Instead of a period, what follows is a comma. Then in italics, the volume number. Enclosed in parentheses is the issue number. And then another comma. These are obviously the page numbers where this journal article can be located, period. And then this is the DOI, or the direct object identifier of that journal article. And it should be formatted the same way a URL is formatted. What is a DOI? The direct object identifier functions just like a URL. They are both addresses of an online article. But the difference between the two is that the DOI is a more permanent address than a URL. Okay, so there would come a time when the URL or the address of an online article will no longer be available. However, if the address is a DOI, it's more permanent. You may be able to find it even after so many years. Do not forget the hanging indentation. Now, how would this particular reference look like in the running text? You may either use the narrative or the parenthetical formats. Instead of naming all the 19 or all the 20 cited authors in the bibliography, you only mention the surname of the first author, followed by the abbreviation et al., which is, when extended, it's et alii, which means and others in English, and others. Now, the period should be right after the small l because it's the word alii, which is abbreviated. Okay, the period should not be after the et, it should be after the al, et alii. And then, open parentheses, the year of publication. If you're going to use a parenthetical format, then the surname of the first author followed by et al, comma, and then the year of publication should be both enclosed in parentheses. Do not forget that the period should be placed after the closing parentheses. Now, if you are going to get information, or if you're going to use a YouTube video as a reference in your essay, then this is how you write down the bibliographical entry, or the list, or the list of reference entry. So you begin with the surname of the content creator, followed by a comma and then his initial, enclosed in brackets, the title of the channel, the YouTube channel, the year of posting, period, the title of the video, and then to indicate that it is a video, enclosed in brackets, the word video, then period, indicate the platform, period, and then the URL. In the running text, it would appear either this way or this way. Now, if it is a YouTube video with no name of the author, or if the name of the content creator isn't provided and it's uploaded on YouTube, then this is how you cite the bibliographical entry, or the list of reference entry. Okay, in place of the name of the content creator, you indicate the name of the organization that published the material, followed by the date of posting, okay, period, don't forget the periods to separate the details, and then followed by the name, or the title of the video, to indicate that it is a video, enclosed in brackets, the word video, period, and then the URL. In the running text, you may use either the narrative or the parenthetical format for the in-text citations. It is actually very easy nowadays to generate bibliographical entries because there are online APA generators. Now, instead of manually inputting the details or encoding the details to come up with bibliographical entries or list of reference entries, you can simply input details of a reference on this website, and it will automatically generate the citation. So you may visit this site or website for you to automatically generate citations using the APA style. And now we move on to the comparison between the 6th and the 7th editions. I will now be presenting to you the differences between the two. Okay, first apparent difference is that in the 6th edition, the location of the publisher is still included. Okay. In this example, this publisher is located in New York. So in using the 6th edition of APA, the location of the publisher has to be indicated. But in the 7th edition, this particular detail is omitted. Okay, so it's no longer included in the reference entry. Next, the in-text citation for works with 3 or more authors is now shortened right from the first citation. You only include the first author's name and then follow it with the abbreviation et al, which is short for et al. So in the 6th edition, when you first cite, okay, first time to mention this particular reference, first time mo siyang na-mention sa essay, in the 6th edition, you have to name all the surnames, all the authors. But in the 7th edition, this is no longer needed. This is no longer done. So even if it's the first time to mention the reference, okay, you simply do this. Okay, mention the surname of the first author and then follow it with the abbreviation et al, comma, and the year of publication. Third difference, surnames and initials for up to 20 authors instead of 7 should be provided in the reference entry or a bibliographical entry. In the 6th edition, 7 surnames are visible. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then ellipsis, and then the surname of and the initials of the last author. So this is how a reference with more than 10 authors is cited. But in the 7th edition, you have to cite 20 names. Okay, first 19, followed by ellipsis, and then the surname and initials of the last author should be included in the reference entry or bibliographical entry. Okay, this one has been mentioned before. Okay, in the 7th edition, the DOIs are formatted the same as URLs. The label DOI, okay, this one, the label DOI is no longer necessary. This is how it's done using the 6th edition. You place the label DOI, colon, and then copy and paste the DOI of a journal article. In the 7th edition, the DOI is formatted the same as a URL. In the 6th edition, the phrase retrieved from is required, and then it's followed by the URL. In using the 7th edition, this phrase is no longer needed. Okay, the URL is no longer preceded by retrieved from unless it is required by the school that you indicate the retrieval date. Okay, in MCL, it's not necessary that you include the retrieval date, so you do it this way. Okay, and then the website name is included unless it is the same as the author. Okay, this is the surname of the author, initial, date of posting of the article. This is the title of the article. This is the title of the website or the name of the website, then followed by the URL. The phrase retrieved from is no longer necessary. In the 6th edition, it is necessary to indicate the format, the platform, or the device used when the reference is an ebook. But in the 7th edition, this is no longer necessary. You don't have to indicate the format, the platform, or the device for an ebook. Okay, this is not necessary. And in place of the format, platform, or device, you instead indicate or include the publisher. Okay, so surname, initial of the author, year of publication, title of the ebook. As you can see here, only the first letter of the first word and the first letter of the first word after the colon, and the first letter of every proper noun is beginning with a capital letter. Okay, title of the book is an ebook. So instead of indicating the format, platform, or the device, you replace it with the name of the publisher and then the DOI, formatted like a URL. Next, we move on to the other guidelines in using the APA 7th edition. For the guidelines, we only have here two important guidelines when we use the 7th edition of APA. First, okay, although this is unorthodox or may be considered ungrammatical, but this one is already acceptable. Okay, the pronouns they or their are endorsed as singular, gender-neutral pronouns. So instead of using he or she, Instead of using these two pronouns, we may use now the pronouns they or their. Okay. Next guideline, instead of using adjectives as nouns to label groups of people, example, the poor. Okay, poor here is an adjective that may be referring to a group of people. Instead of using this particular expression or something that is alike to this, we use instead descriptive phrases. Example, people living in poverty. Okay, so take note of these two important guidelines so that your write-up or your essay will not be considered sexist or discriminative. If you want to read more about the lecture, you may visit this website. This is the end of Lesson 8.